Hello friends, in this session we will be discussing about the exception handling part of Java. Okay, now what is meant by an exception? Is there any difference between exception and an error? Yes, there is definitely a difference between an exception and an error. Exception can be handled, but error cannot be handled. We need to debug the error. The basic or to differentiate that, now whenever I don't have the main method, it throws me something, no such definition found error. Okay, have you ever come across an exception? Yes, we did come across an exception called as array index out of bound exception or class cast exception when we started understanding during the command line arguments, right? Okay, now error, if the main method is not available, we need to explicitly go ahead and give the main method. That's an error. I can't handle that error. I need to debug that error. Okay, but exceptions are basically which happens during the runtime or also during the compile time also it can happen. I'll let you know what is the actual difference between all those things. But exceptions can be handled. To handle these exceptions, Java has given exceptions. An abrupt termination of a application becomes an exception. Okay, to handle this, Java has given us 5 keywords: try, catch, finally, throw, and throws. One minute, throws. Okay, we'll try to understand all these 5 keywords with the help of some example and how to handle the exceptions. As I told you, abrupt termination of a program is called as an exception, right? Okay, now let me demonstrate with a simple example. Class, what am I writing? Okay, class demo, which has the main method PSVM. By now you are able to understand, right? Our public we have not discussed. Static, why this main method is static, void is just the return type of the method, main is the name of the method, and string args is the arguments what we pass. Okay, then I have int a is equal to 10, int b is equal to 0, int c is equal to 0, c is equal to a by b is SOP of c. When I try to print this program, here an exception will be occurred. This part of the program, an exception will be occurred. Now, as a developer or a programmer, I will be aware to some extent that this part of the code might be subject to the exception depending upon the user input. Now, what if the user provides 1 or 2 or anything apart from 0? It is going to work fine, right? It's some value will be given back to C, and C can be printed. Only if 0, then infinity, which can be displayed or which can't be handled, that's when an exception occurs. Okay, if not, things will be working fine. So as a programmer, it's my duty to handle the exception. Okay, to handle that, you can use all these 5 keywords. Now, if as a programmer, if I feel that this part of the program might be subjected to exception, then put that part of the program into try block. Okay, the try block should be followed by a catch block. Okay, now when I say catch block, what it is going to do is basically whenever an exception occurs, it basically that exception will be thrown to the where JVM. Okay, so now, okay, I'll put this statement like this: if at all, if we write this program 10 by 0 or anything, any number by 0 in some other programming language, I'll take for example C. I have whatever I have seen, right? In C program, if I write the program, I'll get a blank screen. Okay, but in Java that doesn't happen. The reason is an exception object will be created inside the JVM from the JVM, and then that will be thrown back to the program itself. If you had handled the program arithmetic exception or as such, so what is this arithmetic exception? This is nothing but an object. The object of this would be created and it can be handled by the programmer. If the programmer doesn't handle, then JVM is aware how to handle this Java exception object, and it is going to manage it. But as a programmer, I should never let the control go outside my code at all. It should remain at any given point of time. The code or the control should be remaining with us itself. Okay. Now assume this is simple. This is just a simple main method. What if I have developed a application and deployed into the server? Okay. Now if this value of 10 and 0 is being fed by the user, now I can't restrict the user to always say it is 0. I can give some statement, please provide the value more than 0, but what if purposefully he gives the values as 0, and this happens, the whole server will go down and the other users will not be able to access the application. So for this reason, what we need to do is basically create a catch block, encapsulate the part of the code which I feel as a programmer, this part of the code might be subject to exception. Handle the respective exception. Now when I say respective exception, a try block can generate multiple catch blocks, or can have multiple catch blocks. That means it can generate, it can generate multiple exceptional objects. Okay. So now arithmetic exception, what is this? Basically it's an object, it's a class. Okay, it's a class available in the lang package, and that object would be created and that will be thrown to the catch block. Okay. Now, okay, I'll clear this part. I'll just write down here like this: try with int a is equal to 10, int b is equal to 0, int c is equal to a by b. So now catch try should be followed by a catch block or something else. I'll let you know later on. Okay. So now this is the end of the method. Okay, let me not be having the end of the method. If this code gets executed, here the exception occurs, then it will be handled by the catch block, respective catch block. Now the control is not gone to the JVM at all. The control is with us itself. I can do any operations here. I can also give a statement saying SOP of please provide proper values, please provide proper values, something like this. I can give a statement so that the user will be aware that okay, I have given some wrong values, that's why the program is not able to handle. I need to provide proper values, or else I can do further other operations also. If an exception doesn't occur, then the rest of the code which is there after the catch block will be continued. Clear with this, right? So the main idea is you need to understand is exception can occur during the execution of the program. An abrupt termination of the program due to some reason will become an exception. Okay, that exception can be handled using the try catch block. Okay, and it's not necessary that try has to be followed by a catch block. Try can be followed by a catch block, or else it can be followed by a finally block. Now what is this finally block? Now see, when will the catch block be executed? The catch block will be executed only when the exception gets occur, only when the exception is being created, or else the catch block will not be executed at all, right? This part of the code will be executed only when the exception has been occurred, otherwise it not will be executed. I will be having some part of the code irrespective of exception has been occurred or not, this has to be executed. Some part of the code has to be executed. So put that part of the code into the finally block. So whether the exception occurred or not, finally will be executed. Okay, irrespective of the exception has been occurred or not, finally block will be executed. Okay, one more thing is try can be followed by finally. Okay, this is one scenario. There is one more scenario like this: try can have multiple catch blocks. I'll come back and show you this program when we get into the Eclipse execution, right? We'll be seeing this. try can have multiple catch blocks, but try can't be alone. This is highly impossible. Try has to be followed by finally or catch block. Clear with this, right? Okay, let us go to see the execution. Okay, this is the program. Now see, integer dot parseInt of args of 0, args of 1, something I have written. I have not handled any exception for now. Now let us see. Args of 0, from where will I pass the arguments? From the run configurations, arguments 1 and 0. Okay. Now if I run the program, it's going to print the values A, B and C, and value of 10 will be printed, no issues. But what if a user gives the value something like this? Okay, something happened. The execution was proper till here. Okay, immediately after that, see, exception in main divided by 0, value of this also has been printed, everything has been printed. Divided by 0, there is an exception, or else it can also do something like this. Run configuration, this part of the code might generate multiple other exceptions also. Apply, see, it throws number format exception. The reason is integer.parseInt doesn't know how to convert 0s to something as int. Okay, if it is a number, it can convert. If it is in the form of number, it can convert, or else it will not be able to convert it. This part of the code can generate another exception also. What is that exception? Args of 0, I am not passing any arguments at all, only one argument. It throws array index out of bound exception. I am expecting the second argument, I am not passing the argument at all. So this part of the code, whatever you are seeing, can generate multiple exceptions. So what will I do? I will go ahead and put this into the respective catch block. What all it can throw? Catch of, come on, arithmetic exception. Object of this would be created. JVM understands what kind of exception has been created, and I can provide, please provide proper values. I can also go ahead and say something like this. So of arithmetic exception, what is the array? Index out of bound exception. You can also generate number format exception, right? Please provide proper values. B value greater than 0, insufficient values, improper values. Okay, now the control is with me itself. I can do any other operation. Insufficient values for now, because I am not passing the proper values. Okay, now what if I pass properly? Things will be, please provide the value V. Now if at all I provide the proper values, then things will be fine. Okay, so this is how exception works. Try, catch, finally. Okay, I did not discuss about finally. So finally will be something like this. Finally, SYSO, always execute. Always, I am there. Something funny I am trying to place it. Okay, if exception occurs also, this part of the code will be executed. I think you people can execute all those things. Okay, so now I am always there. Insufficient values, and I am always there. So irrespective of exception has been occurred or not, finally will be executed. Okay, now we will discuss something about throw and throws. Okay, now assume that this part of the code is been called from some class A, and I have a method which does the things for me. Okay, void hello is the method which is doing some things for me. Okay, we will try and modify some of the code here. Instead of taking the arguments from command line, I will be taking the arguments. Okay, I Okay, I'll modify the code int a comma int b. Okay, so now okay, instead of this I'll paste this here so that I'll take it from the command line itself. AB. So what's the problem here? I already have the variable, so no need of doing this again. Okay, till here it looks fine. Now what would I do here? I'll pass this as an argument to the hello method. I'll make this as a static method so that I will not be able to, I should not create a object. Okay, now a dot hello of something like this I'm passing. Now when I run the program, array index out of found exception, did I make something wrong? Yes, run, things are fine now. Okay, but now see, always whoever calls this method, right, now another person would be calling from somewhere else, another client. So what happens, he has to use the same cache block. He doesn't have any handle, or he is not be able to basically give his own statement in the cache block. So what we can do is, instead of handling the exception, we can rethrow an exception to the caller method. How will I do that? Just go ahead and say throws those kind of exceptions. Remove all the exceptions. Say arithmetic exception, array index out of found exception, number format exception. Okay, so whoever is handling this, right, he needs to basically invoke that exception. Okay, now see, if I don't handle the exception, what happens? The control will be going to the JVM. I should not let the control go to the JVM. So what would I do? I need to go ahead and, okay, I'll make this, instead of hello, I'll make this as a is equal to new a static methods, right? Even before the class gets loaded, everything will be okay. Now what is happening here? A dot hello, I'm calling it. Now if I want, I can handle the exception here and have my finally block also here inside finally. Okay, so it comes to inside finally. Rest is basically an exception has been occurred. I am not handling it here. If I had handled it here, right? Okay, now I can't have a catch block here. See, it throws me an error. So catch has to be before finally and after try. Okay, SO of e dot print stack trace is a API which will basically print the stack trace of it is going to print it as it is. I'll just print the E object right now. Okay, java.lang.arithmetic exception of by 0. Okay, like this you can handle any kind of exception. If the exception is array index out of found exception, it will be thrown. Just because I have handled arithmetic exception, right, I will be able to manage it like this. Now as I made a mistake, instead of arithmetic exception, I had handled the exception. Okay, let us discuss about something like this. Now there are two kinds of exceptions. Okay, one is I'll come back to the program. One is user defined it's not user defined exception. Exceptions can be divided into two things. exceptions can be divided into two things. One is compile time, one is runtime exception. Compile time exception will be divided into again, compile time exception is nothing but which can be caught in the compile time itself. Runtime exceptions can be caught at the will be in the runtime. Whatever you saw, 10 by 0, array index out of bound exception, number format exception, or runtime exceptions, they can't be handled in compile time. Compile time exceptions are IO exception, SQL exception. Okay, these are all examples of compile time exception. Okay, now there's an hierarchy also for this exception. Okay, whatever we saw, arithmetic exception, array index out of bound exception, null pointer exception, number format exception. Okay, all these are subclasses of runtime exception. Okay, in turn, there's a superclass for exception, superclass called as exception itself. Okay, if a class is of type compile time exception, right, then it will be under exception directly. It will not be a subclass of runtime exception. There is SQL exception, IO exception. Okay, again under exception, I should have written properly. Okay, now the subclass of exception, superclass of exception is throwable. Under throwable, there is something called as errors. Okay, whatever the errors we have seen, no class definition for error, no such method found error, all comes under this. Errors we will not be discussing as of now. The superclass of throwable is object. So object is the mother of all classes, but there is also a saying that mother of all exception classes is exception, because any exception class should be a subclass of exception itself. Like arithmetic exception is an exception class, right? This should be always a subclass of exception itself. Okay. Now the other keyword what we have not discussed was basically throws. Also we discussed, which is basically used to rethrow an exception. We need to discuss something related to throw. Now see, there is some condition. On that condition I need to throw my custom defined object. Okay, now see, arithmetic exception is fine. Okay, if the value of b is equal to 0, then I need to throw my own exception. Okay, so what will I do? I'll do something like this. Okay, first thing you need to do, when you are doing a user defined exception class, right, the class, I'll say open lambda extends exception. I'll be doing this. Okay, then the next thing is to override this with the toString method. The reason is, whenever an exception occurs, it should not print me the address. Okay, it should print the exception what has been occurred. So for now, open lambda exception, I'll say. That's how we used to see java.lang.arithmetic exception divided by 0, something you used to see, right? So that's the reason basically behind that. Okay, now then another thing is we need to provide a default constructor. Open lambda, it's good to always provide a default constructor whenever you are creating an exception object. Okay, now forget about the serialization part and all, we have to discuss those things later on. What we'll be discussing, what we'll be doing right now is, if b is equal to 0, then I'll create an object of this. Okay, what would I do? throw throw new open lambda I'll say. Okay, so when I do this, it's a compile time exception, right, because it's directly directly extending exception. So now it is in the compile time itself, it is saying to handle this exception. How would I handle? See, open lambda, we'll specify it like this. Okay, now whenever this can handle, this exception block can handle any kind of exception, that's why it is not asking. Now what if when I don't provide this, right, if I had not provided, it will ask me to handle this exception. See, earlier it was not asking, right? It is asking me to handle the exception and surround with try catch. So all the exceptions along with open lambda will be added, but this throw is used for creating an object of user defined exception. But if I say runtime exception, right, extend this with runtime exception, then no need of handling these things. Nobody is asking me to handle this. There's some error. I think there exception. Okay, throw new open lambda exception. Okay, so right now nobody is asking, but if I change this to exception, right, then people will start asking me. That's because the compile time it is checking. Okay, so now either I have to handle it with these things. Now if I remove these things, everything will only for compile time it is going to ask me, but if I remove this, it's going to ask me to handle the things. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you guys. This is only the basics of exception. Exceptions is pretty huge concept. Handling exceptions comes by experience. The more number of years of experience you gain in the language, you will be having more knowledge of what kind of class or what kind of code will be throwing you, what kind of different kind of exception. So that comes only by experience. In a single day you will not be able to master this exception concept. Slowly when you start practicing, you will be able to understand these concepts. If you do like this video, please give a thumbs up and please do subscribe for the channel. Thank you guys. Thanks a lot.